friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the first 5 books that I read. What was that like limp hand thing that I just did? Today I'm going to be talking about the first 5 books that I read in 2022. I have not read very much this year, on par from last year. Haven't read a lot of books. Haven't read a lot of great books. There we go. This is upsetting. We shall just get into it and I will tell you what I've read. Maybe someday it'll turn around and I'll be reading things that are better and I actually like. Still not sure what my reading taste is these days anymore. So if you know what it is, help me find it. Give me suggestions. The first and second book that I read this year are part of a duology, so I will touch on them a little bit individually, but then more of like a duo since I read them back to back. The first book that I read was Daughter of the Pirate Queen by Trisha Levenseller. This is a reread for me. I read this book back in like 2017 or 2018 when it first came out, and I really should have just left it in that year. Like I should have read the sequel when it came out and just left it at the good memory bank that I had of it, because this for me did not hold up. Not because it's not a good book. Like I think people reading it for the first time now at the same level of experience with reading that I had then would still like it. I think I've just read more since then. I've read like better things since then, that this didn't hold up for me now. Does that make sense? You read a book earlier in your reading career and then you read a book later in your reading career and you've just like had more growth as a reader, and then suddenly I have a hair in my face. It's not as good as it used to be. That's what happened here. The YA pirate book, which I feel like are so hard to come by, especially ones that are done really well. We're following our main character, Alosa, who is trying to sneak onto a rival ship to find a piece of a map. And if she is to gain all pieces of the map, she can get to this special island full of like hidden treasure. Every pirate clan has a piece of the map. So she's trying to steal the map from the other clans for her father to get in his good favor. He wants to get back to this island for like nefarious reasons that we learn about throughout the book. While she's on this boat, this other ship, she runs into the first mate, Raiden, who is this very gruff, aggressive, unlikable male protagonist who she of course has a relationship with, because that is what YA books do. And he kind of assists her, but then also kind of just like keeps her locked in a brig for a lot of the book. They have a very interesting dynamic. There's bickering, there's, you know, that hate to love thing that I do enjoy so much. On my second reread of this, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. It was a 5 out of 5 stars. I have a video of like all the reasons why you should read this book. I'll put it up here, that I made when I first read it, and like my excitement for this book, way different at that time. But on this reread, I felt, sorry, I have notes down here. I felt like the writing was a little bit more amateur. I think this is her debut, Trisha Levenseller's debut, and I would be interested to see how she writes now versus how she wrote then, because I think her writing is probably better now. This felt a little childlike in the way it was written. And I also, because it is so heavily inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean, which is one of the reasons why I loved it so much initially, but that was before all of the controversy that happened with Johnny Depp. And so now, being in 2022, it just like really tainted this book that it reminded me so much of pirates, because I have like such a weird relationship with pirates now, because it's something that I loved so much and was so fundamental to like my teen life. It made me a little nostalgic for the times before all that happened. I don't really know. Then I read the sequel, Daughter of the Siren Queen. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't like it quite as much as the first book. I really wish I would have read this right after the first book. Would have been a better idea, or like the year later when it came out. Should have read them then, left them back there with the nice memories in my memory bank instead of revisiting them in 2022. I did want more from the Alosa Raiden relationship. Like we do get some really like great character development of the two of them and like in their relationship throughout the two books, but I would have liked more from them. I think we could have done more fun things and like gone further with some of their relationship dynamics. There were some really wild and shocking death scenes though that I like really did not see coming. There was like some that were quite graphic and brutal of characters that I just felt like were out of left field. I'm like, oh, this person is dying and they're dying in this way. This is terrible. Like, I feel sorry that these characters are going through these things and I have to like read about this death through this other character's point of view. It was a lot, but like very surprising and a good twist for this book that I needed in that like last stretch when I was struggling with it. But I am excited for like the spin-off book that she's writing in the series and to see how much better it is with like her newer, more seasoned writing style. The next book that I read was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was one of our House Salt Book Club picks and I did not enjoy this. Partly because I read it in 2 days, not because I liked it, because I had to. There was a deadline. I listened to an audiobook, which I don't think I would have been able to get through this book had it not been for the audiobook, and I enjoyed the audiobook, but I listened to it on 2 times speed, which is like unheard of for me. I never listen to things that fast, but I just wanted the book to be over so bad that just kept bumping up the speed, and I was like, get me through this book, please. It is a Romeo and Juliet inspired fantasy light. I wouldn't even call this fantasy. I know it's marketed as fantasy, but this feels way more science fiction. It takes place in 1920s Shanghai. So it's like a real place that like really existed. They just like have magic, right? I don't even remember what the magic was in this book. Like that's how boring it was. I'd say it's more science fiction, urban fantasy than anything. Do they have magic? Now I'm guessing, I don't think they do. There is a plague that breaks out in this book though, and I feel like the book club keeps picking books that involve like pandemics and plagues, like not because we want to relive real life in our books, it's just like a weird happenstance. The plague of this book, like the thing that is ravaging the city, feels very sci-fi. Romeo and Juliet stuff is like, basically the characters' names are Roma and Juliet with an extra T and an E at the end. So very different from Shakespeare. Aside from like their names and a bunch of plot points that are like beating you over the head with the comparison to Romeo and Juliet, it's not Romeo and Juliet. But like the scenes that are Romeo and Juliet felt like very strategically like shoved in the book just to remind you that it's supposed to be this kind of retelling or like force this idea that it's a retelling onto you because it's like a good marketing ploy. I don't know. It didn't need to be Romeo and Juliet because the characters know each other at the beginning of the book. So rather than like meeting for the first time and falling in love and having this like star-crossed lovers, we can't be together rival gang scenario, they've already had that in the past. Like we've already had that. Then they broke up and they're coming back together in this book. So like all that tension and like that starry-eyed romance that you expect from Romeo and Juliet, not present here. There are no flashbacks to the time when they were falling in love. There are no flashbacks to anything. So like it doesn't feel Romeo and Juliet at all. Like I would have rather them just have been like rival gang heirs. Like take out any of their past experience with each other and just make them rival gang members and it would have been enough for like that Romeo and Juliet setup. So it's like a lovers to enemies to lovers, and at the end of the book things happen that they're enemies again. So it's like lovers to enemies but twice. So if you like that trope a lot, this might be the book for you because she does it not once but twice. So nice she does it twice. And that's also how the big bad of the book is that like where we are at the beginning of the book literally is where we are at the end of the book. Like nothing is solved and she just like takes it into book 2. So like so nice she wanted to write to this book twice. That makes me upset. And I thought that the main characters were bland, they were lackluster, they were not engaging, they were not fun to read from. I didn't give 2 shits about any of them, but there were some side characters like Kathleen, Marshall, and Benedict who I would have liked to know a lot more about and who I think would have been better main characters than who were the main characters. And also character Rosalie, like all of them would have been so much better to be at the center of this book than Roma and Juliet, who were both so boring. And with that being said, if you want anything else on this book, please go watch our live show for it. We talk about it pretty in depth, and I did not enjoy. Do not recommend. 2 out of 5 stars. My hands look so orange on camera. I don't have self-tanner on. The next book that I read was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is probably the first Christina Lauren book that I've liked in a hot ass minute. I'm a big fan of their older backlist books, but then once they became mainstream and popularized, their shit got watered down real fast, and now it's just like boring, run-of-the-mill, like all of the spice that made Christina Lauren, I felt like has been sucked out of their books by the publishing industry and just like thrown aside. Like, that's what made their books special, and you took it away from us. In this book, we're following these 2 main protagonists. I don't remember their names off the top of my head. I think the woman's name started with a J. Her daughter's name was Juno. I liked Juno. I don't remember what her name was, or the guy's name. That's not a great indication of how much I enjoyed this book, but I did enjoy it. The main male character works for, or created this like DNA-based dating app. So you have to submit your DNA, and based on like DNA markers and stuff, they can best match you with somebody else. And there's different like levels of matching. Our main female character just kind of like drunkenly one night submits her DNA to the site, and she gets matched with the creator, and his profile's been on like lockdown for years. He doesn't get matches. So obviously this becomes a big publicity thing for this company. River. His name is River. I just really enjoyed it. I loved the whole dating app with like the DNA stuff. That was so nerdy and geeky and so sciencey that I just really bought into it like a lot. I did think that they had like gold level chemistry. Like, it felt very real and authentic and like very well constructed, even though I do feel like it was rushed very quickly. Like, they very quickly progressed this relationship. It really happened quickly, but I thought that it was done well in a way where I forgave it and thought it was fine and really enjoyed it. I still am so annoyed that they are doing these fade to black sex scenes, to the point in this book where I wasn't even sure if they were actually having sex. I'm like, is this a sex scene, or are they just making out? Or is this like a lot of euphemisms for something? Like, I couldn't sometimes figure out what was actually happening, and that was frustrating. And then it would fade to black, and I'm like, well, I guess that was supposed to be that. Would have been nice for a little bit more words to be used to describe that, so I could like follow along. Not because I needed more gritty details, but just because I was genuinely like lost. Like, I didn't know what was happening. The last book that I read for this bunch was another House Salt Book Club pick. This was Ice Planet Barbarians by Ruby Dixon, a book that I never thought I would read. And here we are. I also read this one in 2 days, but this one was much more feasible because the book was so much shorter than the other one. This is a wild ass ride of a book. I first heard about this from Lainey many years ago. She was like ahead of the curve with this book. She was like recommending this to us many years ago, and she was like, hey, I got this book for you. It's about this girl who gets stranded on an alien planet made of ice, and the dude is big and blue and has a tail and horns, and they fall in love. And I was like, I will not be reading that ever. And here I am reading it. This was a thing that I read. Like, I really have no opinions or feelings about this. It is just a thing that I read. It existed in my life for 2 days, and now it's done. It is out of my brain. I will not be continuing with this. It was fun for book club, but it would never be fun by myself. Following our main character, Georgie, where like the beginning of the book happens very quickly. In one chapter, she is kidnapped from her bed in the middle of the night. We like learn about her, and she's kidnapped. She's on an alien spaceship with these very weird alien, I think they were green with like basketball shaped heads, I don't know. Witness a very graphic rape scene very early on in the book. A woman is murdered, maybe, and then the ship crashes and they are on this ice planet. It's literally just like something for us to go from her bed to the ice planet in like a feasible way that you could buy into. Don't know that I bought into it, but she tried. You just have to leave your brain out of the equation reading this book. Like, if you start to think too hard about any of the decisions that Georgie makes, everything stops making sense. Like, just don't think about it, just read it with your eyes. and move on. This is essentially a breeding kink series. Like the whole idea of like the series as a whole is just lots of pregnancies, lots of babies. Like that's the whole thing, and that is not my thing. If that is your thing, this might be for you, not my thing. So I was a little turned off to the breeding kink aspect. We got into that towards the end of the book and wasn't a fan. It's the thing that I read. If you want more feelings, go watch the live show. 2 out of 5 stars. And that is it. Those are the first 5 books that I read for 2022. I would love to know what you've been up to this year, what you've been reading, your favorite book so far this year. Give me the recommendations, please, down below so I can read some better things. I'm very excited about it. I want some really good recommendations to offset things like these Violent Delights and Ice Planet Barbarians, both of which I read for book club. I didn't pick either of those, to be honest. I didn't pick either of them. If you'd like to follow me anywhere else on social media, my Instagram and Twitter handles are on the screen now. Please come say hi. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will talk to you very soon. Bye!